Yo, yo, it's your boy AO, host of Lakers for Life, live, coming to you with another show. This is a channel for fans, by fans, where I just give my takes and my thoughts as a fan. When you guys can like it or hate it, drop a comment and debate it. That's the motto. If you're coming from X, make sure you tapping in with me. Hit me with the follow at World of AO. If you're on YouTube, welcome to the show. Drop your comments throughout the show. Make sure you hit the channel with the subscribe, like, set the notifications and alerts, all that good stuff. But we're coming off a bad loss against the Clippers. And I took 24 hours to gather my thoughts and have a more objective perspective to what went down last night and to zoom out without too much emotion, right? Although I hate the Clippers, I don't respect that franchise. And the emotions just tend to kick in because I want to kick their ass every single night, anytime we play them, regardless of who's on the floor, who's not. So that's just the fan in me that just doesn't like the Clippers. And I hate it when they beat us. So, emotions can rise with that kind of perspective and that kind of take. But what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out, bring some perspective on where we're at, touch on the game last night. We're going to talk about looking forward. What should we expect? What should go down? And then we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts. We got some big games coming up, so we'll talk about that too. But let's get into it. So the Lakers lose last night 103-88 to the Los Angeles Clippers. And yes, that score is correct. We only scored 88 points, but we only gave up 103. So we'll unpack that and we'll get into just level setting this game. So to start, we didn't have Austin Reeves. We didn't have DeAndre Ayton. We didn't have Rui Hachimura. And, I'm not a fan of this player, Gabe Vincent, but we didn't have him as well. So 3 players just from the get-go that are in the starting lineup are out this game. And then a role player in Gabe Vincent also out, right? Between that trio of Rui, Ayton, and Austin Reeves, that's 50-plus points that is not on the floor, right? And a team that already lacks depth, and to lose that many players, you're already behind. Right? But we get into the game. Luka is playing. LeBron James is playing. The Clippers have been 6-21 up until that game for the season. They've been struggling, no doubt about it. Yes, they've lost 21 of their 27 games. I said that in my hitter. And they've been struggling all season. So with that kind of level set, I'm going into the game with, we're down some key players. The Clippers have been struggling. They're not a good team. We should be able to pull this game out. It might be a bit ugly, but let's go get OW, right? And, the Clippers were just missing Derrick Jones Jr. But we get into the game, and from the start, I felt it was just very, very lackadaisical in a sense, right? We got down very quickly. I thought, to be honest, the game was over in that first quarter. And a lot of things went down. I mean, Zubac went down for the Clippers, which is a big loss from them. He's out for 3 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work with that. And how they get through these next few weeks. And, is it their season or, do they rally? But in that first quarter, we just could not get into a rhythm, even on the offensive end. We were turning the ball over. The Clippers weren't shooting lights out. We'll get into the game stats. But, the inflection point really came at the gates, really. LeBron James was our first 7 points. He had the energy. Luka did not have it going. And if we fast forward, Luka was hobbling. He has a left leg contusion is what they're talking about now. We haven't gotten an update yet on what his injury is going to be. I hope it's not a left calf strain because we know that's, a curse word essentially in the NBA when someone has a calf strain, and you got to take that seriously, especially Luca, who had a calf strain last year, missed about 30 games. So holding our breath for that, but he was hobbling, but he was struggling out the gates even before he got injured. Just missing shots, no flow to the offense, chirping at the refs. It was going to be a long game for Luca, and that's concerning. Considering it was a 6-21 team, he usually smells blood when he plays the Clippers, but this was not going to be his game. What was crazy was his second shift when he came back in, hobbling. I thought he played a little bit better. Go figure, right? He had a couple shots go down, but he was missing free throws. He was missing shots. Just was not looking good, and he was coming off a big 40-point triple double against Utah. And I had said I wasn't quite impressed with that game, and I felt like that energy from the Utah game kind of bled over into this from the start, where we just got off to a very slow start. I think we were down 9-0 or something like that to begin the game. And it was a wrap, really. Zoo went down. Luka played a little bit more, but at halftime, he kind of said, he waved the white flag and said, I can't go anymore. But we just didn't come out with a lot of that killer instinct, so to say, at the start of the game. And we've seen that as themes. But to level set this, even with that start, all of the players injured, Luka going out, when I think about this game, there's a lot of anomalies that took place that I have to consider. And one is the injuries that we talked about. When you're lacking depth on this team, a couple players going down is a big deal. And I don't want to discount it like I did in my hitter, right? While I expect a better floor from the players and a level of compete, when I look at the game holistically and objectively, I think we came out and did that for what we had, especially in that second half. We did go on a run, and we went on a 13-0 run, closed the game to 10, got the lead down to about 7. The Clippers then went on an 8-0 run very quickly, and there was a game after that, right? What we were doing that run, while it was a good fake comeback, it just wasn't going to sustain. You would like that energy at the beginning of the game so that it doesn't get out of hand and you could try to really get back into it. But the deficit was just too large at that point. It was too little too late. But injuries aside, and that's something to consider, we didn't have a lot of players on this team playing last night. But when you get into the stats, 6 for 38 from 3. Historically bad. That's an insane stat, especially with the Clippers shooting 16 for 43, 37% on the night. That's a 10 3-point field goal margin. That's 30 points, right? We lost by 15. That's 30 points right there. You make 4 more threes, go 10 for 38. That's still right around a little above 25%. You're in the game at that point. You're down 3. We also missed 9 free throws, and that's become a theme in some of these games. 14 for 23 from the free throw line. That's 9 missed free throws. So with the 3-point deficit margin of 30 points and a free throw margin of us missing 9, Clippers made 5 more free throws than us. That's 39 potential points that are out there. That's a margin between the Clippers and us. And you think about that, and you start to kind of go, okay, maybe this isn't panic or we hit the panic button just yet. This was just a bad night for our squad. We shot 38.6% from the field. And granted, we had 8 more shots than the Clippers, 34 for 88. The Clippers shot 42% from the field, 37% from 3. So it's not like they were shooting lights out. Very different game. We weren't just, hey, they're on a burner tonight. They got it. It wasn't that kind of game. In fact, we held them to under 30 points in every quarter for the game. They only had 103 for the game. And I thought our defense, looking back at it, definitely stepped up in that second half. We had more points off turnovers, 20-14, and the Clippers were turning the ball over. We just didn't capitalize at the rate we needed to. Fast break points, we lost 6-15. So that was kind of the overall game, right? And again, that anomaly shooting night where Marcus Smart goes 0 for 9 from 3. We'll run it down. Marcus Smart goes 0 for 9 from 3. Jake LaRavia goes 0 for 4 from three. Luka Doncic in his 19 minutes was 4 for 13 and 1 for 6 from three. Hell, Vando contributed to the 3-point game. He was actually 1 for 3. But between Smart and LaRavia, your higher volume shooters, 0 for 9, 0 for 4, and Luka Doncic 1 for 6, that's 1 for 19 from those three alone, right? LeBron James, on the other hand, who I thought was great offensively and gave us a burst of energy when we needed it, looked like he definitely had some rhythm. He had his step going, definitely looked more spry. 3 for 7, 42.9% from three, 53.6% from the field. He had 36 points, 2 steals, 1 block. He was the only source of offense really for our team. And if you look at us going 34 for 88 from the field, if you take out LeBron James' field goals made and field goals attempted, the team outside of LeBron shot 19 for 60. That's 32% coming from all other players on this roster that we're playing. Obviously, that's not going to get it done. Even though we held them to 103. When you shoot like that, when you can't throw a rock in the ocean, it's going to be a long night in this league. And that's exactly what happened. So when you peel back, injuries, 50 plus points missing from our roster. We have a margin of 39 points between 3-point field goals and the amount of free throws we missed. Again, anomaly. I don't expect us to be that bad shooting from three, even though we've been average, below average from three. That was just a really bad night. And that's what you get is 88 points. LeBron James had 36 of them. No one else could score on the roster. So that was a big concern. We didn't have a bench. We played Nick Smith Jr., Jared Vanderbilt, Dalton Connect, and Maxi Kleber, which that's an abysmal bench. Let's be real. And we'll get into what this is really saying when you have this amount of injuries, why roster depth is important. This game is an example of it. The only bright spots I could think about for this game, if we want to get to some positives, was outside of the 3-point shots, Jake LaRavia shot 5 for 7 from the field. He had 12 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals. And of those 11 rebounds, 7 were offensive rebounds. I thought Jake, outside of his 3-point shooting, which I really hope comes around, he just can't be timid. He needs to be confident, keep putting them up. These were wide open threes he was missing. Same with Smart. We'll get into him. But there was wide open threes he was missing. Those will go down. I don't want this game to knock Jake LaRavia's confidence, because if that 3-ball starts to go down and you're starting to see 15, 10, and 3 stat lines, kind of some flashes we saw at the beginning of the year, that's going to pay dividends down the line. But he had an overall good game. And I thought he had some really good activity, even on Kawhi. You're not going to expect the world in shutting down Kawhi, who played really well for the Clippers. He was hitting his shots, vintage type shots. But Jake LaRavia was holding his own. He does have size. And I thought he had some good activity on Kawhi Leonard. And this is not someone that's going to be in the starting lineup, but he's going to be a connecting player off of our bench. He's going to play a big role come playoff time. So having games like this, you have to tip your hat and kind of go, man, if he knocks down a couple threes, he has a phenomenal game at that point. But I thought his activity was great. Those offensive rebounds were big. We just couldn't hit a shot in the game. So if there was one positive from the night, I hope Jake LaRavia takes this all-around game, continues to apply it into the future, and has the confidence to keep putting up those threes, because they are going to be there. And we need him to knock it down. And we've seen him knock it down. And I do think that's going to come around for him. He just has to stay confident. I think him being, kind of second guessing himself a bit has not been positive for his game. But when he is confident, he's letting it fly. He's doing the little things. That's when we really see what Jake LaRavia can bring to this team. And I thought he had a good showing yesterday. Marcus Smart, 0 for 9 from 3. He's a streaky shooter. He's going to get the leeway. We can talk about, oh my God, it was an abysmal shooting night, but who else was going to shoot the ball, right? If you're wide open, you're going to take the shots. And at that point, you hope they go down. And that goes back to that point number 2, where it's an anomaly, right? Jackson Hayes, I thought was okay. He was going to get tore up by Zubac if Zubac kept playing in the game. But if you round out this roster, Dalton Connect, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 1 for 3. Just didn't give us the offensive spark we wanted. Jared, I thought he had some flashes in the game that were good. There were some times where he was bringing the ball up, which caused a couple turnovers, especially in that 8-0 run. But I thought he was still good. He should remain in the rotation if the matchup figures it's is conducive to having him on the court. I don't see why he doesn't continue playing, because there were bursts that he does bring rebounding to the table, and I do think he does bring defensive energy. But then you get into Kleber, not much there. Nick Smith Jr. had a run. Himself was 4 for 11. He gets them shots up, boy. Nick Smith Jr. gets his shots up. They were talking about his per 36 is wild in terms of shot attempts. But he had 9 points on the night, 1 for 5 from 3, and his points did contribute to that 13-0 run. He was really our only spark of offense off the bench. So there was LeBron playing with players that aren't known to score. And it just shows you the lack of depth on this roster. Granted, we were out 4 role players. But looking forward, I think there's a few things. One, we haven't seen our optimal lineup get reps just yet. And I've been a big proponent of Marcus Smart staying in the starting lineup once we can get our full roster back. I was looking at cleaning the glass, and it's actually really interesting data. So if you look at cleaning the glass, our best lineup right now that has 175 possessions is Luka, Austin, Marcus Smart, Rui Hachimura, and DeAndre Ayton. They're a plus 12.5, which I think is very interesting. That was a lineup that it has 175 isn't a lot, but it's a decent amount of possessions, and a plus 12.5. So you think about when we can get our starting lineup back, our players back, and LeBron James is the power forward in that lineup with Marcus Smart. I think there's a level of optimism. Yes, Rui has been a knockdown shooter, and we needed that last night against the Clippers. He's been our only reliable three-point shooter to date, right? I do think LeBron in that starting lineup with Rui coming off the bench is going to give us the punch that we need, especially when LeBron really starts to ramp up January, February, right? Second half of the season. I think we're going to see a really optimal lineup there. What's interesting is Luka, Austin, Rui, LeBron, DeAndre Ayton, 164 possessions. That's our current starting lineup when all of our players play, is a minus 10. That's the difference right now. And it just goes to show Rui, LeBron, and Ayton, that's not a front court that we want to keep starting. And the data is right there. And I've mentioned it in my hitters. I've mentioned it in my previous lives. JJ has to be looking at that and thinking, yes, I lean towards offense. I want spacing, but at what expense? At what point does it become diminishing returns where Rui's not really an active part of that starting lineup and getting the shots he was accustomed to at the beginning of the season, right? I really hope JJ digs into that because it's not all about the spacing. And if you get Marcus Smart into a lineup with LeBron James, DeAndre Ayton, Austin, and Luka, yes, it's one less score, but he is a guy that can get hot, streaky. You can't necessarily leave him open, even though he can have games as atrocious as last night. His leash is a little too long and he could be a little out of control, but what he brings on the defensive end is something we don't have in the starting lineup. And I don't think that tone was really there, that defensive mindset last night. It wasn't all that great, but overall, from a macro standpoint, Marcus Smart does bring that, and he's one of the few players that brings that defensive intensity, and I think he really rounds out that starting lineup. So I hope JJ is really starting to see that defense can win you games. You may not shoot this horribly in the future. And it needs to come around, right? So we haven't gotten those reps yet. If you look, I looked up to see how many possessions has Luca, Austin, Marcus Smart, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton played. And if I looked it up correctly on cleaning the glass, it's only 5 possessions. And we're not even going to get into plus minus on that because there's not enough possessions to go down. So think about that. That's, I think, our most optimal lineup, and it's only played 5 possessions total. So in the grand scheme of things, again, we haven't played our optimal lineups. We haven't played our optimal basketball. We haven't had a full roster. It's been spotty. Luka's missed games. Austin's missed games. Smart has missed games. LeBron. And they've all been at different times. So we've had different rotations night to night. You can't build a rhythm. You can't build cohesion when your rotation is changing game after game. I think Trevor Lane posted it up. We've had 16 different starting lineups. It's only been 28 games. And this isn't starting lineups to change up an experiment because something's not working. This has just been out of straight necessity because of the injuries. So that's another thing to look at as we move forward, right? So 24 hours in, I feel better about the loss, and we have to move from it. We have a big game against Phoenix coming up. We'll get into our future schedule, but there was a report from Mike Trudell saying that Ayton and Reeves look like they'll be coming back soon. I hope they come back for that Phoenix game so they can get some ramp-up time before the Houston game on Christmas Day. Where I'm concerned is Luka. I'm really praying it's not a calf strain. It's just a contusion. A contusion is typically a bruise. I looked it up. I'm no doctor. That sounds a lot better than a calf strain. And maybe it's a hoping for the news. Phoenix, maybe he takes the night off, but he's ready to go Christmas Day. So that's something to look out for, because if Luka misses time, I don't think it's an excuse to be punting games. I still think if Austin and Ayton there, we have a chance and we can still be competitive, especially if Rui's in there too. We have our knockdown shooter. LeBron has to take more of a load, but we've seen AR and LeBron play well together. So that's not going to be the ultimate excuse for me, even though Luka's our alpha scorer, our number one player on the roster, and we for sure need him. And we don't want him out for an extended period of time. But, I'm setting a floor and saying that just because if he is out for an extended time doesn't mean it's an excuse to just punt games or not be competitive in games. But with Luka out, if he is out for an extended period of time, that's another situation where our starting lineup changes. We're playing rotations that aren't necessarily be the, sorry about that. Little technical thing. We're playing rotations that aren't necessarily going to be our rotations later on in the year. And it's going to take that much more time to get the reps when we do have all of our players playing, right? And that's what worries me now that we're about a third into the season, is that we still haven't gotten an opportunity for cohesion. So I'm really hoping the injury for Luka is not something serious to where we have to restart again. And if the team picks up some rhythm between AR, LeBron, now we have to reintegrate Luka like we integrated LeBron when he came back. And when you're constantly playing this kind of shifting, juggling type of game, building that cohesion makes it very, very tough. Especially when, to get to my next point, of especially when you see gaps on the roster, and it's imperative that Rob starts to look at making moves in January before that trade deadline, early February. So you're balancing a roster that still needs to have cohesion. Our optimal lineup still hasn't gotten reps, right? Which is Smart, Luka, again, Reeves, Ayton, and James. 5 possessions so far this season. And then we're talking about potentially bringing in some reinforcements if we can have a trade go down and Rob can make it happen. So that's a lot of integration that needs to happen over the second half of the season, right? So there's a lot to think about. But to go back into the trades, yesterday's game, while an anomaly, there was a lot of our role players out. There is a good percentage of our roster, about 20 to 25% of our roster, that is unplayable. We have a dead 15th roster spot. There's Bronny James. Maxi Kleber hasn't gotten into any shape just yet where you can call him a rotation player you can depend on. Adu Thero is a project. I think there's a lot of potential there and that we need to kind of nurture and develop over the course of the season. But that's someone you're looking towards. Hey, if we give him reps now, maybe next year he can be a player like that with that Max Christie type of development, right? And he can maybe get into the rotation at a higher clip, but not someone we can depend on this year. And then you have Dalton Connect, who I don't know needs a pep talk, get out of his head, or just a new scenery on a different team. But he has just not come with it this season. He had that 30-point game in the G League. He might need more G League reps for that confidence, but he just hasn't been there. That's 5 players, and so 4 players in a dead roster spot. That's 33% actually of the roster that we can't depend on. There's nothing there. That's a large amount, and that puts a lot of pressure on our 10 players that do make up the rotation. And when those 10 players also have gaps, when you talk about Vando, you talk about Gabe Vincent, even Hayes on some nights where he shows flashes, other nights he just can't handle the matchups that he has in place. He's not there to where you can just depend on high-level play, although he is getting better. But that's another 3 players in your 10-man rotation that are still iffy, right? That puts a lot of stress on your starters and on Luka and on Reeves and LeBron. And it's just something that's not going to be sustainable through an 82-game season. And it's not something that you can scale, right? We talk about building the right foundation, having the right process. And I do think there's a level of compete sometimes, a turn on, turn off switch that we have, maybe based on the roster and its lack of depth, but it's not something you can build on. And our SRS, our net rating adjusted for strength of schedule, is below 1, I think, after that loss. And it's not where it needs to be at. Typically, a contender is +5 from an SRS perspective. And we haven't played a bulk of good competition just yet. I mean, I believe in our last 9 games, we're 4-5. We've just been alternating wins and losses. And those have been some good teams that we've played. So when you think about that, the lack of depth, there's a lot of factors that are contributing to why we can't set a floor to build off of. The foundation is very shaky. And that's why in my hitter, out of emotion, but when you objectively look at it, this Laker team is playing a bit over their head. It's taken some great individual performances, some light stretches. Granted, we took advantage of those stretches. We beat who we needed to beat. May not have been pretty, but that's not sustainable again, and it's not scalable. And to go back to the point, Rob really needs to think about bringing some reinforcements in. And we need some real 3-and-D players. I mean, there's the Herb Jones and the Andrew Wiggins and those type of players out there. We need just players with potential that can play 2 sides of the ball and grow into it. The Obajis, the Quentin Grimes. Like, you need some solidarity in that bench unit where they can score and they have a level of compete on the defensive end. And it's not an easy task. Rob brought the players and filled in some gaps in the offseason, but the hard part is now. And I think it's very evident that we are going to be riddled with some injuries. That happens. Teams are dealing with injuries, right? But you have to be able to have a roster to give you some level of floor to where you can compete on a night-to-night basis. You may not win all the games, but you are having good process, playing 2 ways, and you're still building, even if you're injury riddled, right? And he has to, this is I think, going to be a big trade deadline for Rob Pelinka. And granted, we've had a lot of injuries, but the gaps have been clear since day one. While Marcus Smart will help in that starting lineup, I think the roster is just not built right now to sustain injury. It just puts more pressure on our star players to have to overperform on a game to game basis when someone's missing. And that's something that won't scale for 82 games. So who Rob gets, that's on him. That's his job. But I know Mark Walters is going to be watching to see what he can get done because he's had this task now. We've been talking about having two-way players on our roster for years now. And again, that's the hardest player to acquire because every team wants two-way players, but you got to get it done. This is not going to be a gap year. And, Giannis rumors, all of that. We need to compete now. And this team does need reinforcements because we've seen we're going to be injury riddled. And maybe there's going to be a time at the end of the season where it all kind of comes together. But with what I just listed off, with 5 players on your roster, 5 spots on your roster that are virtually unplayable, 3 players in your 10-man rotation that are iffy, that's hard to stand on. And that's why you have those losses where it's double digits and we essentially pump the game. Because at that point, the starters are going, and our big players are going, look, this game is cooked. We got to get ready for the next one because we don't have the roster right now to have the luxury of resting or taking a night off and letting someone else kind of fill in the slot. Everyone's got to play at max capacity right now for us to get these wins. So what Rob does, I'm looking at him. The gaps are clear. I don't think you need more data. You have the net ratings. We've shown you starting lineups. If you have one 3-and-D player that I hope we can upgrade over Marcus Smart, I think it's going to play dividends, even if it's a Keon Ellis, something like that, a Sadiq Bey. May not be the biggest needle movers, on paper, but for this team that's missing, we don't have 3-and-D players. Our closest one right now might be Jake LaRavia, and even he's not a pure 3-and-D player. Marcus Smart is not a 3-and-D player. He can get streaky from 3, but he's not a legit 3-and-D player. We have a lot of one-sided players, right, that are good with what they do, but it makes balancing this rotation that much harder. And, JJ did mention, I thought it was kind of ham-like that he said we were competing last night. And you know what? I will give him that. We did compete last night with what we had. That second half was a lot better. We only gave up 103 points. The Clippers did not shoot lights out. We just couldn't make a basket, even out of it, a slightly below average level. We were just bad. So he was right in the sense, and I'll take that back. He was right that there was a level of compete, but I also haven't been happy with JJ. I think he needs to be put under a microscope too. And granted, there haven't been a lot of reps yet, but he needs to figure out how to find synergy between Luka, LeBron, and Austin, because the Luka play, as great as he is, and this is not a criticism on Luka as a player in totality. He's a top 5 player in this league, hands down. No one can debate that. But finding the balance between his heliocentric play, Austin Reeves, LeBron James is going to be important. How do they work together? And, getting away from the turns. I know we like to see Luka go on those burners in those first quarters, but when he doesn't have it, then what, right? What are our counters? What are our secondary actions? I don't think he's found synergy just yet. And it hasn't been exposed because we've just had players in and out of the lineup. But that's something I have bookmarked as, watching on how he brings synergy to that trio. And the defense, while we don't have necessarily the players there, he neglected playing Vando. He hasn't started Marcus Smart. I think there are some things we can do with the roster we have now, once it is healthy, to be a better defensive team. Because we have not paid any attention on that end. And granted, the Clippers, we played okay in that second half. The defense turned up. They're just a bad team. We got to remember that. They're 6-21 on the year. This wasn't a good team that we had a good defensive effort with. You know what I mean? We hung in there. We shot the ball terribly, but the Clippers have not been a good team. If we play better teams, this defense will continue to get exposed. We gave up 135 points to a Utah team that didn't have Lauri Markkanen. And no, we don't have the two-way players and we don't have a defensive roster, but you need to find a way to optimize from within, and Luca, or I'm sorry, JJ Redick apparently had a pep talk with Luca and LeBron to say, hey, you all need to step up and set the tone too as leaders on this team and play and compete on the defensive end. That was not on display in that Utah game. They said, nah, we good. We Gucci. So that's something I'm looking out for too. And it comes with balance in the roster. I think giving up on Vando for those 9 DMPs and playing him out of necessity was a red flag. We know he's hard-headed and steadfast, but again, you got to build that culture that we had at the beginning of the year, that banshee, that dog eat dog, that, let's do the little things, that has dissipated. And the stands of LeBron will tell you, or the LeBron haters will tell you, it's happened since he's come back. The TL is just all over the place in terms of what side. It's a little LeBron issue. Is it a Luka issue? This team sucks. Oh, it's just one loss. I think there's merit to all of those takes, and you got to blend them together and look at it holistically. But it starts right now with this roster. LeBron has to be a better anchor on the defensive end. I'm glad to see him more spry, more fluid on the offensive end, but he unfortunately has to be an anchor. We know Rui's not that player. We know Rui's not going to bring it on the defensive end. It's been countless years where we've wanted more defense out of him, and it just hasn't happened. And we got to stop looking towards that, which is why I want him off the bench. I think he can be a great release valve, a great knockdown shooter, bring some offense, have more touches when he's not in the starting lineup. He's in those staggered lineups against second units. But LeBron, as our 4, has to be the anchor on the defensive end. Luka is another player. I'm not excusing him. Has never been known as a defender. He's been adequate at times, even decent. That's kind of gone away too. So it starts with them, and it's, Rob Pelinka needing to get us a starting wing, a 5th starter that is a two-way player, which is, again, hard to get, but he needs to get it done. Marcus Smart comes out the bench for that with that energy with Jake. Now you have a more rounded lineup. But until then, we have what we have. And that defense needs to be taken more seriously. We're a bottom 10 team in terms of defense. I still think this team as is can be league average. DeAndre Ayton is a player that feeds off of energy. And when it's rolling and that intensity is there, he steps up his defensive game. He's not going to be a tone setter, but I think he has capability. But those are some things that I'm looking at with JJ Redick on how do you bring that culture that we had when we were down players and we were fighting in games. It's not going to happen on a every night basis. It's not something that's sustainable. You're going to need players on the roster, but that mentality needs to be there. And I know it's a tall order. LeBron is 41, but in his good offensive games, it's like, look what he's doing at 41. In his bad games, it's, well, he's 41. So what is it? What side of the equation is it? What excuse are we? Is this just going to be a game to game basis and we're going to use 41 to fit a narrative? At the end of the day, he needs to be a defender. Whether you hate him or like him, he's a Laker. He's a leader. He needs to set that tone. And I thought he competed in the second half last game, but I want to see more of that. And that's something JJ's got to instill. I give him, if it really happened, the credit to holding your leaders accountable, but it didn't resonate. That's for sure. So JJ's, again, the rotations, how he finds synergy with the trio on the offensive end when they're all healthy, and then how does he get this defensive intensity up until trades or reinforcements come, are my big 3 factors for JJ. And it is okay to put him under the microscope. He's an analytical guy. He's fiery. He has an opinion, but he can also be held accountable too. And he does position himself to really rely on his starting players or players that he just has an affinity for, like Gabe. And that's going to bite him. If I'll go on a limb. If we were to flame out this year and do what we did last year against Minnesota, he's out. This year is his chance to prove that he can take that next step. So I don't know if it's leaning on his coaching staff, him to get more creative, but he needs to step up as well too, as much as the players need to. And we'll point to there's been some injury, but he did establish a culture early on. I think that's the one thing I could have given him, but that's gone. And he needs to reintegrate the team and bring that culture back. But my eyes are on JJ Redick. I don't know. It might be too early to say anything, but I have a microscope under him. So we'll see how that kind of pans out. And that's kind of the look forward. We got Phoenix next. Dylan Brooks he salivates when he plays us and LeBron. That's not going to be an easy game. We've seen them come back from a 20-point deficit last game. They've murdered us in a game previous to that. They're going to come ready to play. And if we're down Luka, hopefully we have Ayton. Hopefully we have Reeves. We got to come out ready. And we got to come out ready to play and get that game. We can't let games slip in a West. For those that are enamored with the record, we can go from second to fifth very quickly. I think we're making a little margin to seventh, but the record doesn't do anything for me. I don't get enamored by that. I look at the data and the metrics behind the scenes. I see an SRS net rating of 1. And, quite frankly, us at the second seed was a little more, it was a lot higher than where we are from a net rating perspective. And that needs to get fixed. And that just comes with everything we mentioned in this pod. So Phoenix is a big game. I want to go into Christmas with some momentum, even if Luka's out. Because come Christmas Day against Houston, the Rockets, who just pounded and beat Denver, even though Denver has had no Braun and no Gordon, they beat them. That's a marquee game for us. And this Lakers team needs a marquee win. Let me ask you, chat, if you're all in here and you've been listening, what has our marquee game been so far this season? We've had some good wins, some motivational wins, shorthanded, but what has the marquee wins been? The Toronto buzzer beater, they've kind of been shaky a bit in the Eastern Conference. Was it San Antonio? Austin Reeves did his thing, right? We went down to the wire with them. We got the win. Was it the Austin Reeves buzzer beater against Minnesota? Minnesota came off beating OKC right now. They got their marquee win. San Antonio's beat OKC. Rockets, handled Denver. They've been handling a lot of teams. And they got size. They play hard on the defensive end. And they do their thing. That's a team that we, in our losses struggle against. Amen Thompson, that boy's a beast. Jabari Smith, Kevin Durant, Şengün. They got a squad. But Christmas Day is a marquee game day. I mean, the OKC game did not go well. We lost by 30. We didn't come to play. We gave that up. We'll get a comment in real quick. Allen Buckets, trade Fluka and get Giannis. Oh, man. I appreciate the comment, Alien Buckets. Be sure to tap in, stay tapped in with me for the shows. But I don't know about trading Fluka, man. And I'm not even going to call him Fluka just yet. That's wild. That's wild. I'm going to say there are times where I do get frustrated with the play. I think that comes with the territory with Luka. And it goes back to the comment I made about JJ Redick finding the synergy and the balance between the heliocentric ball of Luka, but also involving Austin and LeBron in a more cohesive manner. I do agree with Giannis. I think the more time that goes by, and if Giannis is not traded by the deadline, month and a half away, I think there's a very good chance the Lakers could be in the mix. And Austin Reeves, that's been my boy on the Lakers. I got his jersey. If you've been watching my shows, you see me at Crypto. I rep his jersey. That might be the player that has to go. You bring in an elite two-way player, right? But I think Luka's very much here to stay until otherwise. And that's the person we're going to be building around, man. But I appreciate the comment, Alien Buckets. But I don't think Luka's going nowhere, man. Especially with LeBron probably on his way out on his retirement tour next year. It's Luka, either AR and what we build around him, or it's Luka, maybe a Giannis, or Luka and another star that we don't know about yet. But Luka's in this to win it. And I think there is a formula for us to be winners with Luka. And I hope he's not injured for an extended period of time. We need him. But he is a polarizing player in the sense of his game style, very Harden-esque. You have to build a very specific team around him. And JJ got his work cut out for him. I don't think that's an excuse. He's got to get creative. He knows the game. He coaches with pride, and he does have an ego. So, you're watching film, you got to figure it out. But nah, man, Fluka, that's wild. We'll see what happens towards the end of the year. But I appreciate the comment, my man. Stay tapped in. For anyone else that got any comments before we wrap up the show, please drop them in the chat and I'll answer your questions. If I'm right or wrong, or you're not messing with one of my takes, please let me know. Let me know. Let's like it or hate it. Drop a comment and debate it. But going back to the Christmas Day game against Houston, we need a marquee win. And I think that's what's kind of been missing from the start of this season is what's been that game when you're like, okay, we got it. We got a chance. I mean, we punted the OKC game. We lost by 30, and that's just set the level. And the margin between us and OKC is very wide. So you already kind of messed up that game. Granted, LeBron didn't play that game, right? Houston's the next up. It's a big game, and you got to win that game because that's another marquee game we will have blown. Denver has been rolling with no Aaron Gordon and no Christian Braun. Those are two big-time role players. Aaron Gordon is a G. That boy can play. Very pivotal to the Nuggets. But they got people stepping up. They're starting a two-way player and winning games. Granted, it didn't go well against Houston, and they have Jokic, the best player in the world. They're finding ways to get it done. Minnesota just got their marquee win against OKC. They took it to them, hung in there. OKC is in a level of its own. All their losses have been by a close margin. So these teams in the West have been rolling. And that's what I keep saying. We're 19 and 8, but I just don't think it's at the same foundation as some of these other teams I just mentioned in the West. We lost to Boston, who are now quietly the 3rd seed in the East. They killed us. Granted, we were very depleted that game too. So we haven't had our full roster for these marquee games that have been coming, and we haven't really put one under our belt. And in the last 10 games or so, we've been a little bit iffy with teams that are over 500. If you're trying to be a contender, you need these marquee wins. Just beating Phoenix isn't a marquee win in my book. That's an expected win. Some games you lose that are expected, but there's nothing where I'm going, oh my God, we beat the Phoenix Suns. Let's go. We're contenders. It's not it. That's why I'm putting a lot of importance on this Christmas Day game, and I'm hoping we have our full roster. I'm hoping the injury to Luka is not serious. But we got to go out and get some. We had some good, resilient, gritty wins at the beginning of the year, but Portland's flailed out. Minnesota, we've beaten them. I'll give our team credit. We've done our thing against them. But they're, coming around now too. It might look different when we play them next, right? So Houston is a big game, and it's a team that, historically that archetype is not what we do well, against. And that's where it goes back to the conversation we had about bringing reinforcements. We need more 3-and-D players. We've seen what a balanced lineup with a Marcus Smart can do. Can you imagine if we put a 3-and-D player? Shoot, can you imagine if we put an actual two-way player in that 5th starter spot? That might be a little too pie in the sky, wishful thinking type of thing, but at least a 3-and-D player with some size. I think even a Keon Ellis, crazy as it is, I think he can move the needle for us because we're just sorely lacking those type of players on this roster. And, Rob Pelinka needs to start figuring that out. And if we know that it's hard to aggregate those type of players via trade, or I'm sorry, not aggregate, acquire those players via trade, why aren't we flooding our G League team, our two-way players, with nothing but two-way potential? We have this dude named Manning down in the G League right now that is a 3-and-D player. He is a Tybal type. I haven't seen him get burned at all on the main squad. Nick Smith Jr. is our other two-way. And granted, he is a spark off the bench for offense. He's not a 3-and-D player. He's not someone we can go to the playoffs with and expect something with. He's not the type of player that's what we need. We need right now. And then Drew Timme is the other one Dude is a baller in the G League, but he's not ready for the NBA stage. His game is not, again, what we need. So, this goes back to our front office staff. What are we doing in terms of our development? Dero is a player that I think needs to get some burn and some reps so that we can slowly grow him over time. But we need to do that with our two-way spots too. Denver got that dude. I forgot his name. If you're in the chat and you remember this dude's two-way player on Denver's name, pop it in. But he's starting for them now. And I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but he's a 3-and-D type wing. They found him on a two-way. Why aren't we doing that with our two-way players? Why do we have players on two-ways that are not really going to make the main roster? Right? And you can argue Nick Smith Jr. should play over Gabe Smith. Cool. Or Gabe Vincent, sorry. But I don't even think Gabe Vincent is the right player for this roster. And you already have Reeves and Luka. You need bigger guards. That's why Keon Ellis, I think, could be a great add. He plays two ways. He can hit the three. He's feisty on the defensive end. That's one player. We need a couple. That's not easy. I don't think the Pelicans are going to get us Herb Jones. But I think you need to really just go in and get one of these players. And, that's the trade stuff. We'll save that for January. We know there's gaps. But our two-way players, we can control now. And we haven't. I mean, if you really wanted to bring some players on the two-way that aren't, really our types of players, but Kobe Buffkin's down there killing. I think he's a better guard than Nick Smith. He's the player we wanted instead of JHS, but some really weird things going down with our two-way. I don't know why we don't have 3-and-D two-way players that we're trying out, and we're constantly rotating them until we hit one. You get 3 chances, and you can constantly rotate out your two-way players. So where's that been? Especially when you have a gap at that spot. There might not be players that are going to be like rotation players right away. I mean, we had Goodwin, but we couldn't re-sign him because we don't have money for that 15 roster spot. We only have $1 million under that apron, sorry. So just a lot of blame to go around where it's not ideal. I don't want to be completely doom and gloom. I think what we've done to be 19-8 has been good. Is this sustainable and scalable? No. And I think everyone can agree on that, right? Whether you want to over-index on being excited about the 19-8 or be a little more cautiously pessimistic like myself, maybe cautiously optimistic, we don't take away from the 19-8, but I think we can all agree that it's not sustainable and scalable. That's all I'm trying to say with this whole pod. And I know we've gone on 52 minutes, and I appreciate those that have been watching me. Stay tapped in. I do hitters after the game. I try to get on live to do my reactions after the game when I can, but we're building a community here. I'm just a fan like y'all. I'm not these influencers. I just try to get off what I'm thinking. You might be thinking the same. And if you're thinking something differently, I love the discourse. Drop the comments on the videos on YouTube. Drop the comments on me on X. There's a dope-ass community, Lakers Muse started called Lakers X. I'm a moderator in that thing. Tap in with me, comment, just stay locked in. We building a cool community. I think there's some cool things we're going to do this year, but we all Laker fans at the end of the day. And I think all of us just want that chip and to contend. We have different takes on how we get there. But like I always say, like it or hate it, drop a comment. And we got one more comment. Adam, T2R9T, did you just come on? If you mean, did I just come on to this live? We've been going live for about 53 minutes now. We're kind of wrapping up, but if you have a comment or, anything about last night's game or where we're going from a team perspective, drop that in. I'll answer it. But I appreciate you coming on. As far as this Lakers for Life community and movement, I've been doing the hitters. I call them 1 minute hitters, but they've kind of extended to 1 minute and 2 minutes. I'm trying to, really get the format down. But I started those about 2 seasons ago just for fun, and been posting them up, and then just slowly each year, been trying to go. But we got the comment. I just want to say Gabe and Maxie got to go. Bro, you ain't lying. I do not like Gabe Vincent. And I think I've said it on a couple of my lives on some hitters. I know JJ loves this dude. If it was the Miami Gabe, okay. I'll be honest. I was very excited when we first signed Gabe. I was because he was coming off that Miami run. I thought he played really well. He's just that heady guard that was gritty. But man, has he been everything but everything opposite of that? Injured, and when he does play, just getting exposed because of the lack of size. I mean, from that first game, Jimmy Butler just getting him in the post, and it's been horrible. His 3-point shot hasn't been that great. I mean, it's been all right. He'll give you those one or two threes maybe in a game, but I don't think he's the right player. And he hasn't even been on the floor like that to even get a sense of, okay, he's what we have. He's a two-way player. He gets it in. I agree. I would love to upgrade that spot. I would love to upgrade Gabe and Maxi. You're right. If it was the Maxi from 3 years ago that put that buzzer beater on us when we had AD, I think it was 2 seasons ago, maybe three. That Maxi Kleber was dope. Can hit the three ball, was an actual threat, physical. Can do the dirty work, get you rebounds at time, but he's not that player right now. And I don't know if his ramp up time, how much time he needs. I mean, the dude gets hurt on every other possession, so I don't know how much time we have with him, but they're both expiring contracts. I think that's how other teams are going to look at him. There's no really merit. Could Gabe be a contributor on another team in a different environment? Maybe. Different type of role. He doesn't have that kind of on-ball role where he can score at any given time like he did in Miami. He had that leeway. But even with his defensive grittiness this year, it's been a lot about he just fouls quite a bit, throws his hip into players, and it just hasn't been good basketball with Gabe. Do you think it would be too extreme for JJ to try making LeBron the number one option for a few games to see if he still has it? That is a great question, Adam, and I appreciate it. And if you haven't, stay tapped in with me, man. I want to hear your thoughts as we continue through the season. Subscribe and tap in with me, World of AO on X. But this is a good question in the sense of it goes back to what I was saying about taking turns, right? And while I agree there's going to be different usage in different games, and we do have staggered lineups throughout the game where LeBron can be showcased, he can be that number one with maybe an AR. He's shown, one thing I didn't mention in the Clippers games, that he can push the ball still. He likes to get out in transition. So there is that pop, and I think that's energy that he can bring, and he does. There were some lineups that we had where it was just Braun, no AR, and he did well with the team he had. I think Jake has been feeding off LeBron pretty well. It seems like when LeBron hits, passes him for that corner three, he does make the shot typically, and that's just from eye test. And I think there's players that do work with Braun. I think Ayton and LeBron have built a good connection too. So I do think there's a chance for LeBron to have the usage he needs and be the number one in specific lineups. But what the big question is, to go to your point, is we have these kind of segments within a game where maybe AR is the number one, LeBron is the number one, Luka is predominantly the number one. But how does JJ build the synergy between the three? Can there be actions with LeBron and Luka? With Ayton as a roll release valve, Austin on the soft side, ready for some catch and shoot threes. But I don't see that synergy in that action. I see a lot of just Luka, PNR with DeAndre Ayton, and everyone else standing around. And that's creativity that JJ needs to bring in what I'm looking at. Now, another interesting point to your comment, for LeBron to be a number one outside of a staggered lineup, but maybe getting reps within the trio, that's going to take Luka accepting that there's going to be possessions where he needs to play off ball, and he can't be idle off ball. He needs to be effective, whether it be an off ball screen, running two-man with LeBron, doing something essentially. And I think there was a couple tweets on the TL. I forgot who reported it, but they said like JJ has brought up that concept to Luka, and he's been a little uncomfortable with it. And rightfully so. He's been the number one his whole career. And offenses have revolved around Luka at a very high clip. That's why it takes so much to build a specific team around him, where it's just Luka, maybe a secondary creator, and a lot of two-way players, right? Lob threats, rollers that are big, and then 3-and-D guys. So we're going to get another comment in. Another LeBum Glazer. Ugh. Monty White, J-Y. Thank you for the comment. Make sure you stay tapped in with me and subscribe to the show. I don't think Adam necessarily is a LeBum Glazer. I think he's just saying, hey, maybe we need to try something different, right? And I get it. Lakers fans were so polarizing. There's LeBron stands, there's Luka stands, there's stands for every player. There's people that like some player and not the other. And we need to find the synergy. We need to remember we're the Lakers. And how I always take it is, I don't care who you are. If you are a Laker, I'm rocking. But we need to work cohesively as a team. And if it takes one player to sacrifice for the other, so be it. Doesn't make you any less important. I think LeBron is important. Luka is important. AR is important. They all play specific roles, and they have certain expectations in their roles. But going back, I do think Luka needs to kind of, with this current roster as constructed and our ceiling, what it can be with an offensive force of LeBron, AR, and Luka, he needs to play a little bit of different basketball that he's not necessarily comfortable with for those reps. But it needs to involve all three. And I've said it in multiple shows now. I think we still underutilize DeAndre Ayton, who's been super efficient offensively. And when he is scoring, that defense rises. He's an energy player. He feeds off of our stars. And with that type of efficiency, we need either JJ to be more creative with the offense that we have and the players that we have in the offense, or we need to bring a coach that can do something and has a vision for those players. And there will be a time where LeBron's not on the team anymore and it's going to be Luka-centric, but there's still AR, there's still Ayton, and whoever else we bring in the future. But I just don't think that creativity is just there with JJ. It's a lot of our organized offense, I feel like, is defined as just playing two-man. And it's just, hey, DeAndre is going to come up for the screen or whatever player. Luka's going to get some type of mismatch that he's going to expose. He is very methodical and he has that court vision, but it's just players standing around with the roller, right? And that's why he likes that lob threat to just dump it off when he's going to the lane and a double comes over, or a big man shows and he gets him off the two-man game and he can toss it off to the big man for the dunk. That's a type of organized offense, but it can't be our central organized offense, especially when you have AR and LeBron. They can't just be catch and shoot players when Luka has the ball. And that's where I go back to, there's got to be some other counters or actions we can run that get everyone involved. Luka's still probably the creator, but we need a little bit more movement, a little bit more action, because the defense sets in really well on that. And it's not going to work in the playoffs if that's, us hunting a matchup and then it's just two-man and that's it. So that's where I say my eyes really on JJ Redick. And to get into Adam's point, I feel like JJ needs to be more innovative with the lineups. Try starting Vando instead of Rui one time, just to see if his defense can be just effective enough to make the transition better. Yes, I agree with this point. And again, I appreciate all of the comments that are coming into the chat. If y'all are watching, don't be shy. This is a place for discourse. Everyone's opinion matters, and we're going to break it down. Like it or hate it, drop a comment and debate it. Get your comments in. But Adam, I think you're correct. And that's why I always go with, I want Marcus Smart in the starting lineup, especially when our trio is back and healthy, because he does bring in that balance of defense and, is still a threat on the offensive end. Now, Marcus needs a little bit more of a leash, but he does bring a 3-and-D aspect, right? He's streaky from the three. I think he can get to the rim. He finishes all right. So that goes back again to the offense and what we run. But to your point, Vando, even, I agree. I think there could be some games if the matchup serves correctly where Vando could be someone that could be in that unit because he is bigger. He's a great offensive rebounder. We've seen how he disrupts and mucks up a team's offense with his energy on defense. He had a great defensive play last night on Bogdanovich, which LeBron ended up stripping Bogdanovich and went for a dunk. But the defense was so good from Vando full court, and I appreciated him. Raj Chapalu pointed it out too, pointing out that he picked up full court because if LeBron didn't get the steal, that would have been an 8-second violation caused by Vando. And he did some other good things last night, and he's done good things in the last 3 games where JJ has to give him a bit more of a nod. And I think we've played him out of position, especially last year. He's a bit frenetic. I think if we can finally define a role for Vando, it will turn into something. Now, is he a player that, if we get a better player offered in a trade for Vando and we get off his contract, I'd be open to that. But we have him today, and there are good things that he can do. Good things that didn't deserve 9 DMPs or whatever it was from JJ, which is still horrendous and something I've marked as like, no, dude, what are you doing? But I think there's some merit to your comment. And it's not going to work for every single matchup, but sure, yeah, because he does bring in that defensive intensity that the starting unit currently lacks. And he's bigger than Marcus Smart. And what's crazy is he's dropped a 3, at least one, in the last 3 games. And I'm not looking too far into it, but it's nice to see when the 3 goes down, that corner 3. He shot it at a pretty decent percentage last year. It's kind of sneaky good. If he actually got that down and he's a PJ Tucker type from the 3, oh my God. It would do wonders for this team. Wonders. I can't just get myself to have any confidence that it's going to go down for a consistent period of time. But hey, 1-3 for the last 3 games. I don't think your point is necessarily off. So, but that's on JJ again. JJ values spacing. JJ values offense. And we've seen Vando have games that he impacts the offense even with his defense and lack of offense. So that's an interesting point. Do the Lakers even have a backup forward? They will if we start Marcus Smart or a Jake LaRavia or we trade for a 5th starter. That's not Rui. And we have LeBron James in the starting lineup. And I think Rui's most optimal position on this roster is the backup 4 spot because I think he's going to get more touches in those staggered second units. He's going to be able to knock down those threes. And he's, to his credit, been our most reliable 3-point shooter on this team. Austin and Luka haven't even shot that ball that well. But he has for a consistent amount of games going into last year. So him at that backup 4 spot, we see that he's not a good defender, but when he is guarding other 4s, he's adequate. He's enough. And I think when you're staggering and he can play with second units, and hey, if he gets on fire or there's a matchup that's being exposed where he's able to run the baseline and get some easy dunks, he can close games. But, with LeBron starting and we can get that 5th starter, or it's a Smart or a Vando, I think it's going to be more Smart. I think that's a big jump for Vando to go from not playing to a starter. But hey, crazy things happen. But Rui in that backup 4 spot, I think, is the most optimal. Now, he's probably a good trade ship right now. He's also an expiring contract, and he is having a good season. I think he has utility on other teams. So when we get down to it, what players go in the trade, you want it to be a mixture of Dalton, Kleba, Gabe Vincent, and if you have to throw a Duke Thero in, you have the 1st round pick, you have a 2nd round pick. That's kind of like the tool set you want to work with. But if Rui pulls you a Herb Jones, if the Pels end up wanting Herb, the Pacers want some front court depth. If they have some players that are kind of interesting, but if Rui nets you a player, I think you got to do what you got to do. But in an ideal world, we have a starting 3 That's a two-way 3-and-D player, and we keep Rui on the roster if that's possible. And that could be asking for too much. But I think it puts us in a very good position when you have your fifth starter, who it may be, but you have Jake LaRavia, Rui Hachimura, Vando, Marcus Smart, Hayes off the bench. That rounds out your roster a lot more than what we're seeing today. I think I would like a better backup big than Jackson Hayes. So like the 2, 3-and-D players, or an elite 3-and-D player, which is I think pie in the sky, with a better backup big that is a true rim protector. Does have more offensive chops than Hayes. I will say Jackson Hayes is continuing to be a project. If he was our third big on this roster, we would be in a great position. I think his verticality is improving. He finishes at an elite rate. There's a lot of utility to that rim running. I think he does give you some activity. There's some matchups where he's just not going to be good. Zoo is going to be the one. So, there's some good players out there that hardly play. They would be cheap and useful. Luka Garza is one of them. Yeah. And that's on our scouting staff, which we just fired. And I don't know who Mark Walters is putting into the front office, but that's that internal in-league scouting where you need to find those types of gems. There's like the Ogbajis on Toronto. You might not get the name brand player, but players like this that, if put in the right position, maybe could pay dividends for us, right? And we could unlock a part of their game that wasn't being exposed. With the team they're currently on. And that goes back to Rob Pelinka. We saw last year when he brought DFS, and DFS wasn't a perfect player. I was a big fan of DFS. He's not the player he was in his Mavs days. But when we brought DFS, that was one player. He changed the culture of our team. And granted, we put him in positions where he wasn't necessarily the most optimal, but he did what he had to do. And, our defense was a lot better with DFS. And that 20-4 run that we went on, he was a big part of it. And we didn't have AD. We didn't even have Luka for a stretch of it, right? Granted, we had Max Christie too, but DFS was a big game changer. So if we pull a type of player that can have that level of impact, and DFS was not like a name brand, we know he was a good player. He could hit the three on occasion, and he does the little things, but he wasn't a name brand player. He was definitely a marginal player that we brought on, but he paid dividends for us. He transformed the team. If we can pull one or two of those players, this team could look very different come February, March to close out the season. And to your point, it's these little players. So if anyone in the chat, if y'all got suggestions on players, we've seen all the stuff on the TL, the Keon Ellis's, the Herbs, the Wiggins, but who are those players deep on those rosters that aren't getting an opportunity, like the Ogbajis maybe, or, everyone mentions Nick Claxton, but I don't know how gettable he is, right? Robert Williams. There's Quentin Grimes, who may not get extended by Philadelphia, right? Who has some experience. I've heard Josh Green. Not really convinced with Josh Green. My bro, Shay, who's been on a couple of my lives, is talking about Sham Penny from the Wizards. Big guard, can shoot, has a good feel for the game. You see what his brother's doing in San Antonio. I think they got similar skill sets. I think Sham Penny could be a cool player on our team. And, if we could free up some salary and bring in a buyout candidate for that 15th roster spot, this team can look very different. And the fact that we have, again, I'll say it, no other 3-and-D players really on this roster, a true 3-and-D, I think it'll pay dividends incrementally with what we're trying to do here. Bones Highland's a bucket. He's had very good defensive rating his whole career. He's an energy player. He's not, I feel like, a needle mover to me. He does his thing. He's a burner. He got that Lou Will type of game. I haven't looked at his defensive rating, but if what you're saying is right, then that's an interesting person. I mean, if you could pull an Ayo Dosunmu from Chicago, I like him better. But, we need to bring a level of 3 and D reliable shooters that you can put around Luca. I mean, look what Derrick Jones Jr. did in Dallas, right? He always had potential, but I think he really got unlocked with Luca. He turned into that 3 and D player, big time defense, and they got to the finals. So again, players like that, very interesting. But I think we need a little more than Bones Highland. You know, yup, DeSumo is a cool player, but we need a couple of them. We're a couple players away to be, I think, in contender status. True contender status. So we'll see. I'm at about 1 hour 15. Hey, Adam, shout out to you, man. Please for sure subscribe and tap in with me on X at World of AO and on YouTube, Lakers for Lifers, man. We'll have more shows in the future as the season progresses. Again, guys, we got Phoenix, we got Houston. We're all waiting for the Luka report. If you're a Luka hater, whatever, we need him. Can it get better with him on the floor? Sure, but we need him if we want to hit whatever level we want to hit. So I'm hoping there's something serious. So I'm waiting for the news. Adam, thanks, my guy. Tap back in and we'll continue having the discourse, man. I appreciate you commenting and bringing some discussion. And again, for all of you all just joining, hey, no opinion's a wrong opinion here, man. We debate it. I appreciate all of you. We're trying to build a new community here. I got a lot of cool things on my mind. I'm just a normal guy like y'all. My word is not bond. I'm just a Laker fan, again, that wants to contend and win a chip. Again, so bring your opinions on future shows. Drop them in the comments. Tap in with me, y'all. But have a good Sunday night. We'll lock back in for the Phoenix game. Peace.